Canada has become the latest G7 nation to announce its plans to recognize an independent Palestinian state. Prime Minister Mark Carney says Ottawa intends to make the announcement at the UN General Assembly in September, joining France and the UK, who made similar announcements earlier this week. Global's Mackenzie Gray is following the story. He joins us now from Ottawa. Mackenzie, we appreciate this. So it's been a part of the conversation in Canada, certainly for the Liberal Party, advocating for a two-state solution as part of a negotiated peace process. So walk us through how we got to this point, the implications and the reaction.
Yeah, it's certainly quite a change from the two-state solution where both parties would negotiate, and then once an agreement came to by both parties in that situation, the plan essentially was the Canadian government would recognize a Palestinian state from that point forward. Mark Carney was pressed on that a number of times yesterday, kind of trying to poke at the reasons why there was a change under Justin Trudeau and many prime ministers before that. That was the position of the Canadian government. Mr. Trudeau had been pressed on that previously and defended the position that needed to be negotiated between the two sides in this situation. Mr. Carney didn't really have a great answer yesterday, but if we kind of peel back, regardless of what the prime minister is saying, and you take a look at the situation, it certainly seems like there's a clear coordinated strategy between France, the UK, and Canada in this situation, in part to put pressure on both Israel, but the US, who's certainly backing Israel in this situation, to either get a ceasefire and when there are negotiations to try and end this war, to have included in that a Palestinian state that is recognized by other countries. We should also point out, too, that some of the things that Mr. Carney said yesterday in terms of kind of caveats to what would need to happen in order for Canada to recognize a Palestinian state are things that are going to happen well past when this is set to happen at the UN General Assembly in September in New York. Things like elections, which would happen in 2026, Palestine not being militarized, which is a very interesting point as well, too, and Hamas not having a role within Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank subsequently, too. So, despite the fact that Mr. Carney put those preconditions in place, the fact is Canada at the UN is going to recognize, or at least Mr. Carney has signaled the intention that Canada will recognize Palestine at the UN in advance of those conditions being met.
While this announcement was made, it has a support in many ways with France and the UK basically having a similar position. But in the process of this, expand on this, alienating Israel further, in many ways alienating the United States. And of course, there is the trade deadline coming up tomorrow. How could this impact that and everything else globally?
Yeah, we heard from Donald Trump at around 12:30 this morning on Truth Social, posting about how Canada recognizing a Palestinian state could make things harder for a trade deal to be done. And then this afternoon, we've seen that Mexico has got a 90-day reprieve on tariffs coming forward. So far, that hasn't happened with Canada. We should point out when it comes to reprieves, when we go back to earlier deadlines that Donald Trump set, because of course he set all kinds of different deadlines going all the way back to really April 1st. Mexico got a pause first, and then Canada got a pause. This is also something to point out in terms of who recognizes Palestine. A lot of countries in Europe do, France included in that. EU got a deal, no problem. UK has done so. They got a deal, no problem. Donald Trump likes to poke at different points. I don't think this is going to be a huge impediment in terms of being able to find a trade deal. I think the issues around trade are going to be the bigger problems in this situation. But we did hear from Mr. Carney yesterday saying that August 1st is not a date that people should necessarily think there will be a trade deadline by. That's something that's been telegraphed from both the premiers and the prime minister previously. And so it'll be interesting to see how things play out on that front.
All right, many layers to this developing story. We appreciate the update, Mackenzie. Thank you so much. That is Mackenzie Gray joining us from Ottawa.